Hey guys, you've caught me fixing the Bentayga with a much cooler facelift design. Give me one sec just to finish up. Take that bit of Conti and there you go. Now that's perfect. So guys, welcome back to Remove Before Race. I'm your host Raz. Last time we had Bentley on the channel was the first time that we've ever featured them, and we did the full history of the brand, leading from its complicated past all the way to the awesome W12 Continental, which is their best known car. And today we continue that story by looking at their least traditional offering, and that is the Bentayga super luxury SUV. Here is the facelift version. This is the V8, which is the first model available in the facelift. The Bentayga's had a massive visual update to bring it in line with the new Continental and the Flying Spur, so the whole family looks like one cohesive unit. And inside we've had some big updates in terms of the infotainment as well. And we're going to explore it all today with this Verdant Green Bentley Bentayga facelift V8. So guys, today's episode of RBR is sponsored by a brand very close to the hearts of my beloved vehicles, literally, and that is C-Tech chargers. Now, if you've heard the name before, I don't blame you, because they are multi-award winning across the world. Their chargers are used by over 40 of our favorite car manufacturers, simply just rebranded with their logos on them, like Porsche, Bentley, Audi, Lamborghini, Ferrari, and ever since they created the switch mode technology to deliver the correct current to your car, they've essentially been the basis for every single smart charger in the world. So guys, you'll notice my C Black series is not there anymore because the battery actually died. We didn't charge it, we didn't put it on a trickle charger, and I've had to replace the battery. I've had to foot the cost for it, plus newer cars, so much technology in them, even when they're parked. Similarly for cars like my lovely 300D here, that just doesn't get used that much. It's so important to charge these things up. So if you don't charge your battery enough, or you only do short trips in a car, something called sulfation happens, which is a build-up that then reduces the life of your battery. Now C-Tech, super clever battery chargers, particularly their newer chargers like the MXS10, which has something called recondition mode, which helps remove that sulfation and increase the health of your car's battery. If you want to go even more pro, then you have the professional battery charger here as an option as well. One really cool one that I love, it's a small accessory but really worth it, is the eyelet. And what that does, gives you a traffic light system here, and you can simply leave that within the car, and it's almost like a battery indicator. So guys, that's C-Tech helping maintain the battery life of our beloved cars. Check the link down below to see all of their products. Big thanks to them for sponsoring today's episode. So guys, a super luxury Bentley SUV. Where does an idea like this spawn from? Of course it spawns from the need to increase sales numbers, because we know that luxury SUVs sell in huge numbers in countries like the USA and China, and indeed in Europe. So back in 2012, Chairman Wolfgang Dürheimer showed us this, the EXP9F Bentley SUV concept. Now, it wasn't actually that well received back then. In fact, I remember myself hating on it. You look at the comments on any of the automotive websites and people are literally laying into this thing for its design. Whereas I think actually it's aged really, really well. It looks really quite similar in terms of the blockiness to our facelift. And I think we were all a little bit wrong. Maybe we weren't ready for this design yet, because to my eyes, this looks great. I'd love to see the next Bentayga literally look like this from the front. But this showcased what the car would eventually be, and that is a W12 or a V8 or a hybrid power super luxury Bentley SUV. And this was, as I said, the brainchild of Wolfgang Dürheimer, who was the then chairman. But previously, he used to be product lead at Zuffenhausen at Porsche, and he's the one who pushed the Cayenne through. And of course, the Cayenne is perhaps the biggest success story of an SUV turning around a sports car company. So he brought that same idea here, and of course, now the Bentayga is their biggest selling car. Even last year in 2020, they sold 37% of Bentaygas versus everything else, which is massive considering they still had supply issues due to COVID. Anyway, because of the negative backlash to the EXP9F, when they made the first generation of the Bentayga, they played it a bit safe. It wasn't that square, it was a bit more rounded off. The lights changed completely on the front to be more like the then Continental. Same with the rear end, a lot more like the then Continental. So it was all a bit more rounded. But then I think it ended up looking a bit like a fat Cayenne SUV rather than a proper Bentley. I much prefer this facelift, and I want to show you everything that they've changed. You can see a lot of it immediately, but it's a big step forward on the outside from the previous one. With the facelift, I think my favorite part is this front quarter section, because it's that much more blocky if we compare it directly to the older one, which was more rounded off. This has got a really aggressive front that really reminds me of Continental and Flying Spur. Now the grille, it's a bit more upright, which helps as well. This is the matrix grille, as they call it, and it looks, again, in a more intimidating position, which you want for a luxury car. The lights are gorgeous. They've really upped the game here. This is like cut glassware finish, as they call it. And when you look deep inside, it looks like it's a piece of jewelry from Swarovski or something rather than an actual headlight. It's a really, really nice touch. I would still love to have seen the EXPF's lights on this. I hope we get it at some point in the future. Then you see the lower air intakes, really nice and wide. The chrome strip making the car look wider on the front as well. It's a really good look. You come along the side and we've got a brand new B wing on this side wing here, which again, you'll see that flow through into a nice part of the interior that I'll show you later. But that looks a lot better than the last one did as well. The wheels on this are Bentley Bentayga specific, and of course you get a whole host of different designs depending on what you like. The big changes though have been on the rear. First of all, you've got a much larger boot lid spoiler on the top compared to the previous version. But that's not where your eye goes. As I did at the start, it's all about those gorgeous lights that they've now created. These are, as they call them, 3D elliptical tail lights with these lovely animated LEDs, as you'll see here. These look really, really great on the road. Of course, the number plate has moved lower as well, and that's allowed for Bentley to be written on the now wider boot lid. And in fact, the entire rear is now wider than it was before. We've got a wider track on the rear, which gives the car an even better stance. The lower bumper completely redesigned as well. Again, more blocky, good use of the chrome strip there. And what I love is how the pipes seem to mimic the rear tail lights now, which gives it such a uniform look on the rear, but again, widens it a bit. So when you look at this thing from far away, it truly looks like a taller Continental. Now, as I said, there's 3 different levels of Bentayga available in the facelift, and at the heart of the matter today is the V8. This has got 542 brake horsepower and 770 Newton meters of torque. It all comes from a familiar V8 from the VAR group, but with Bentley defined attributes to it. Now guys, let's move on to the interior, because there's been a few changes inside the Bentayga, but I think they are significant ones. So guys, welcome to the wonderful interior of the facelift Bentley Bentayga. It's always a highlight of the Bentleys. Like we found with the Continental, it's simply the nicest sports GT coupe to sit in. That was just a fact. It was a glorious thing. And similar is true of this Bentayga now. The pre-facelift was already a fabulous car from the inside, but there's some small tweaks that have been done here that really bring it up a level. The first thing is the infotainment system. You'll recognize the layout from Porsche because it is shared with them, but it's a big step forward compared to the last one. And you'll notice this middle section of the center console has changed massively compared to the past. We actually have a knob here which will allow you to control the screen, so it's not just a touchscreen. Again, that's similar to Porsche. I love that because I find this safer. As you guys know, I don't like relying solely on touchscreen, so that's great. And it's a very logical system to use and follow as well. It's a nice 10.9-inch screen, really clear, and in addition to that, we've now got a fully digital driver zone in front of us, again with some lovely animations. You can change the screen in front of you, but it seems to really suit the rest of the interior as well. It's nicely encased inside the trim of the front dashboard, and it's not like a big tablet screen, which I'm less of a fan of those as we move on in this digital era. CarPlay and Android Auto are also now standard in the Bentayga, as they should be. What I love is what they've changed here. You've got a lovely Bentley clock here, but you've got that B logo that you find on the outside wings that I mentioned to you guys. And it looks brilliant. It's such a small change, but a fantastic one that sets the facelift apart massively. Additionally, we've got brand new seats, all new seats in this Bentayga. They are trimmed beautifully, they're really, really comfortable. And on the rear, you actually get more rear leg room now. And what I love the gigantic glass roof, which gives a really airy feeling to the interior. It feels like it's got much more space than the competition, even though they're pretty similar. And that's good design on the interior on behalf of Bentley, allowing the occupant to feel like they've got a more airy space to sit in. You've also got a digital screen on the rear to control climate control, and you've got a host of USB-C ports if you need them as well. The door cards, again, they look amazing. And one thing I really liked, I like the speaker grills because they seem to match or look similar enough to the front grille of the car. You've also got a wireless charging pad in front here, which is good. The steering wheel is lovely. It's nice and slim, but it's a luxury finish. And I like the internal part of the airbag, which has been changed in this facelift as well. Very easy to use and a really nice feeling steering wheel. I also love the fact you've got the Bentley logo on the brake at the bottom. It's a nice little touch, but it means a lot. With the vents, the little controller here, it's fantastic. It's just one of the best parts of any Bentley interior. At the heart of the matter, we've got the gear stick here with the Bentley logo. Love that. But it's the drive control unit here. Again, it's a nice, easy to use one. We've got Bentley, which is the recommended driving mode. Sport, which brings things up a notch. Then you've got Comfort, Custom. Though I do wonder what these other ones are. It looks like you've got Snowball with hairiness, which I'm sure that's not the case. Then you've got Gravel, bit of off-roading. They should have maybe just named those rather than putting pictures there. So guys, that's the interior of the new Bentayga. Now let's take it on the run and see how this Bentley luxury SUV fares on the open road. I think we all enjoy a good wafty ride sometimes. I don't think it matters who you are or what car you're used to driving daily. Sometimes it's just nice to waft about in something exceedingly comfortable and higher up than other cars. Now, as we said, there's a lot of rivals to something like the Bentayga, but they're only rivals because they come from a premium brand and they cost similar money. Whereas positioning on something like a Bentayga is very, very important because it's very brand dependent. Now, whereas something like the DBX comes from what is essentially a sports car manufacturer like Aston Martin, customers and reviewers coming into it are going to expect a sporting experience, and that's what you get out of that car. Similarly, with the news of Ferrari making the Purosangue, you're expecting an extremely exciting and sporting SUV. Whereas when you cross over into the realms of, say, Rolls-Royce Cullinan, G63 and then Bentayga, your expectations, rightly so, are completely different. We've already seen from the interior walk around that the Bentley really wins in a big way when it comes to the interior. And for me, that is more than 50% of the battle won for this type of car, where this car is positioned. The final thing to get right for Bentley is to make sure that the driving experience, both for driver and passenger, mimics the opulence of the interior and the exterior. So, at a car tested at £146,000, I'm expecting good speed and performance, but to a certain level. I don't want massively direct steering. I want something that's easy to drive in and out of town on motorways, but not to be hindersome if I'm pushing through some B roads as well. But similarly, if I shift into a comfort mode, I want the car to be as cosseting as possible, like a luxury saloon from the same manufacturer. So it's got to have some breadth of ability, this Bentayga. Currently I'm in comfort. I'm going to switch it into the Bentley mode that they recommend for mixed driving. In fact, I'm going to put it into sport while we do the performance thing. We've got 542 brake horsepower, which on paper doesn't sound like a lot for a car of this size and weight. However, in practice, it's actually very, very fast indeed. So the car definitely has the ability to put down a lot of speed and to give you butterflies when you want them. The steering is okay. It's not got massive amounts of feedback, but it's okay for this ilk of car again. You will begin to feel the limits of the handling as the car begins to understeer, mainly because of the front axle. But again, you're expecting that in this size and positioning of car. I keep talking about positioning, and I apologize for that, but I think it's so important for this ilk of car. The V8, of course, familiar, used across the bar group in various cars. I'm not going to name them, you can guess all of them. But as with all of those cars, the Hot V setup is great in this, very responsive at all rev ranges and all speeds. And it really does feel a lot more powerful than 542 brake horsepower in this. There's not a massive amount of sound that you hear from outside the car, but inside you hear a nice V8 rumble. There are no pops and bangs. Why would there be in a car like this? I think that would be really odd. Just the rev itself is quite powerful, it's quite nice. I mean, that must look seriously fast from the outside. So when I look at the price and I look at the speed and the performance, I think it matches quite well. But I think all of that takes a back seat because I've had this car for a week. I have not been driving it like that, okay? I've had it in the Bentley mode, which is a really good mix, by the way. And I've just been cruising around with this. And when I need the power, it's there. If we move on to the whole comfort side of things, the suspension and the steering together are undoubtedly a highlight. It's so easy. I mean, I'm driving it with 2 fingers at the moment, which I shouldn't. It's not a good habit. But it's so easy to drive around in. And unlike something like the Mulsanne or the Flying Spur that you want to be driven around in, this is the type of car that you actually feel like driving. Because it's nice and easy to drive. You're sat really high up. You get really good visibility everywhere. And you get to enjoy the best part of the interior sitting in the front, which is this lovely dashboard area. I have found while driving around that I feel less of a knob driving this than I did my G63 that I used to have, or than I think I would probably in a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I don't know why that is, and I spoke to the other guys on the RBR team, and they seem to agree as well. We can't quite put our finger on why it is. I mean, I never compare this to the Urus, I'd never compare it to the DBX. I'm thinking of the customers who would go into something like a high-end Range Rover, G63, Cullinan. Those are the customers who I'm thinking about. And when I compare this car to those, I don't feel as much of a knob as I would driving one of those cars, and I don't know why that is. Is it the heritage behind this brand? Is it the fact that it's very much the left field choice compared to the others? Is it the spec that we have today, the green with this gorgeous interior? We couldn't quite place our finger on it, but I definitely feel more comfortable driving this car around than any of the others. The only downside to this car is just how big it feels when you're going through smaller country roads. But apart from that, it is really a joy to drive. It's a great daily car. I can imagine doing some fantastic road trips with the family in this. The fit and finish and the exterior design has come up to the level that we were expecting it to be in the first place, which is a very high standard indeed. All of that paired together with how well this car does the luxury thing on the road and gives you the performance when you need it, means that it's a really compelling package. The engine is an interesting point. We've got the V8 here, it works perfectly well. But I think we're passing the point where massive engines in this ilk of luxury car are what you really want. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I would prefer if the Bentayga ended up being in the future a fully electric or a largely hybrid car. I think that would make a lot more sense. I'd love to see what the upcoming 6-cylinder hybrid is like. That should be interesting. But I really think this car would benefit from the full EV treatment. Because engine note, etc., it doesn't really come into it. You want something that's responsive, but you want something that's very quiet as well. What might be nice is to have the W12 option as a speed, and then your other normal Bentaygas to be either EVs or hybrids. So undoubtedly the most luxurious SUV we've had on RBR. Really enjoyed driving it. Guys, if you've enjoyed this, please do like, subscribe, and share this video. I'll see you guys again soon.